Reformed Church.
I was just thinking the other day, and then we kind of got to talking at the house, but I was thinking about, how we view circumstances or problems in our lives, right? It always seems to be, right, that it's the most pressing thing on our mind, right, is our greatest concern, the most pressing thing on our mind. And there was something that I shared with you guys last service, I believe, where we said that we tend a lot of times to focus on our suffering instead of focusing on his suffering, right? And even though we would like not to admit it or to say it out loud, right, most of the time we magnify our suffering more than we allow him to magnify his suffering in our mind, right? We are to be people that acknowledge the suffering of Christ and the glory that followed for us because of his suffering. But we would magnify it. It doesn't matter how small it is. If the small thing that we're going through is the one thing that we're suffering with, quote unquote, at the time, no matter what it compares to with somebody else, if you're going through something, that's the one thing that people tend to magnify above the suffering of Christ. And even though that's unfortunate, right, that we would never want to say that we would magnify our problem, our relationship issue, our this diagnosis, this suffering, this sickness, this disease above what he bore for us, right? But that in essence is what happens, right? We allow things, external things, and we were just praying that a second ago, right? Instead of giving him entrance into our mind, for him to magnify, for him to testify what he needs to testify of, we make our thing so huge in our mind, right? And we magnify it so large that it seems like, the world's going to end unless this thing gets solved in my life, right? But the interesting thing is that when you, regardless of what it is, right, and you've heard this said before, when you look at natural things, you're going to be looking at one thing today and you'll be looking at another thing tomorrow, but you're always going to be looking at something, right? There's always something to behold, something to look at, something to try to distract you. But when you begin to behold the glory of the Lord, we've been saying, allowing the Lord to be able to teach you the glory that lives on the inside of you, allowing the Lord to teach you what he is like, the present circumstance that you find yourself in, let him be able to show you himself so that you can see yourself, right? You begin then to see and to appreciate the suffering of the Lord, right? And be able to see the solution, right? And there's an interesting thing that happens that we believe that we have singular problems, right? In other words, that if somebody says, like how you doing? Any problems going on? Oh, well, and right away, we can name off the problems that are going on. This is happening. It's not about not talking about your problems and denying them. I'm saying that there are things that we see that are yet to be resolved, things that are standing in our way, things that are bringing our thinking down to an earthly level, right? And if you think about those things, you would think that you have singular issues, that it's a health problem, it's a mental problem, it's a depression issue, it's whatever, right? We can name them all, right? But in actuality, the problem that we have is not actually that, right? What we really have is really just a knowledge problem. It's not, I can look at things in my life and I can say, well, that's a problem. Well, the thing is, the solution to that problem, right, is easily rectified by me growing in the knowledge of Christ, right? Growing and understanding what the Lord has done for that thing, right? And then when I understand that and when I'm established in that, then it's no longer a problem. So do we really have, you can look at your life right now and I am almost positive, right, that we think and we say it's this thing. Man, if I can get rid of that problem, everything would be fine. But that's not true, right? You're kidding yourself to think that way. That if you could just get rid of this issue, then everything would be fine. Because it's not. When that's gone, there would be something else for you to look at, right? Life does not work like that, right? When you think carnally, right, there will always be a carnal thing for you to be distracted with. But it doesn't have to be that way, right? Our suffering can come to an end, right? Like suffering doesn't have to be a regular, normal part of our everyday existence, right? What can be a normal part of our existence is a deeper and deeper and deeper yet understanding of the suffering of Christ, right? And the glory that we find ourselves living in today. You know, there's so much to be said about growing in the knowledge of the glory of God, right? It's mentioned all over the Bible, but there are times when we think that things that are missing in our life or things that are not right can be rectified by us concentrating on them, right? But the thing is that's a misconception, because we think that it is our effort that's going to make that better, right? Our concentration on it that's going to make that better. And it's not that there are not natural things that you can do to find relief, right? In other words, this is not how God is. God is not saying you just suffer in it until you grow. In other words, suffer every single day at the same rate and at the same pain, the same problem, the same depression, until you come to a place where you are fully established, right? It doesn't have to be like that. I mean, obviously, you're growing a little bit at a time, which is awesome, right? But also, don't forget, right, that it's the Lord that can give you the wisdom to be able to understand what things can be done, even naturally speaking, to give you some relief in the meantime, right? And it's not you racking your brain, and it's not you becoming the greatest, internet explorer that there was to find the exact thing that you needed to go to, right? I'm not discounting anything as a thing that God can use to be able to find you temporary relief. But the thing is, it doesn't come from your concentration on the thing. It comes from your mind state on Him, right? That's where, good ideas can come from. That's where wisdom of God comes from. The same way that God, everything else, including your health, right? Health and life for your body comes from the knowledge of Christ. Also, growing in the knowledge of Christ also leads us, obviously, to be able to have or extract wisdom from the inside of us, right? So if you just really look at it, it is a knowledge problem. We don't really have singular issues. If there are addictions or repeated, I really detest that word, actually, but if there are repeated things in the life of a believer, right? Because I just have a thing but in saying that a Christian is addicted, and maybe I'm looking at that word incorrectly, but to me, when I hear that word addicted, I hear the connotation that this is something that you will forever be desiring and wanting more and more and more of, regardless of what happens or regardless of what you do. And even if you abstain, you still want it, right? But I don't believe that that's where a Christian lives, right? We have desires and a body that can be controlled and empowered by God towards every good thing. So even if it's something that you continue to feel, even if it's something that's incessant, that continues, that comes up all the time, right? That is not your problem. Don't focus on that, thinking that that is what you have to solve, right? Even if God were to do anything to help you, or to temporarily alleviate it or whatever, and then you kind of go back to your coasting mode, right? That's not where faith is going to come from. Faith does not come from you seeing the Lord help you in a single thing, right? Faith doesn't come from you seeing a miraculous power, right? I mean, the rich man and Lazarus, right? That's what Abraham said about what he said to the rich man. He says, even if your family, right, because he was talking about his family, and if his family could see someone being raised from the dead, even though he was in torment, if his family could see someone raised from the dead, then maybe they would believe, right? But he says, but they have Moses and the prophets, and if they don't hear what Moses and the prophets are testifying to them, seeing somebody raised from the dead is going to do no good. It's not about us finding that. It's not like we're going to be in a better place because we get relief from our present problem. You're going to get relief from your present problem, and then you're going to come into another thing, and you're going to put your eyes on that thing, right? It's what we're looking at. It's not what we're going through. It's what you're looking at. And what you're looking at now may be this problem, and then tomorrow you'll be looking at the B problem, and the day after that you'll be looking at the C problem, right? If your eyes are stayed on the things of this world and it's earthly carnal thinking, you're just going to go from thing to thing, always wanting the Lord to help you with this thing. And it's not that the Lord doesn't want to help you. It's that there is a better way to live, right? Than asking the Lord constantly to help you with something, but yet not growing in the knowledge of what Moses testified, of what the prophets testified, about what the Spirit of God on the inside of you is testifying of. and that is to grow in the knowledge of Christ, right? When we don't see certain things working out in our lives the way we should, when we are impacted, when our mind is swayed by circumstances, all it is just short-sightedness. That's all it is that we're not seeing as clearly as we could be seeing. In 2 Peter 1:9, he says, "For he who lacks these things is short-sighted even to blindness, and has forgotten that he was cleansed from his own sins, from his old sins." What does cleansed from my own sins have to do with the fact that I'm lacking fruitfulness in a specific area, that I'm not being as fruitful as I can be in the knowledge of God? Right? What does for being forgiven of my sin have to do with any of that? It's that it was in, right? It was in Christ paying the price for my sin, right? That was the root of all the evil that is in the world, right? It's the root of all death that exists in the world. It's that if I forget what his suffering, I forget what he did to rid me of sin, right? To cleanse me and wash me of all sin. And therefore, if he cleansed me from sin, how is it that I have not escaped the corruption of this world? Of course I have, right? If I've been cleansed from sin, I've escaped the corruption. Because if I escape sin, I've escaped death by consequence, right? By relationship. But when I don't see that, I'm just being short-sighted. I don't have a health problem. I got a vision issue, right? I got a mind issue is what I have, right? We don't have health problems and wealth problems and prosperity issues. We have seeing issues. There's something that we're not seeing, right? So there is nothing greater. Listen, going into a new year, it's a great time to be able to see how many things the Lord has taught you over the past year, and it's an awesome time to be able to say, like any time of the year is. But if we say, you know what, Lord, more than ever before, I want to continue more than ever before to grow in the knowledge of Christ. I want to do this one thing, and I want to do it on a regular basis. If I've ever acknowledged you, I want to acknowledge you more. If I've allowed you entrance into my heart, I want to allow you entrance into my heart all the more, right? So that what we see can change. So what we're looking at can change. So we can truly, our mind can shift from beholding the glory of this world. In other words, beholding the power of death that is at work in this world and affecting our mortal body, and shift our mind from that, right, to the suffering of Christ and the glory that is presently inside of each and every single one of us. I don't even think you've actually sent it out yet. That little write-up that you sent last night, you haven't sent it out. But there's a thing, whether we actually end up sending it out or not, that'll come. But it's an interesting thing to be able to see, that the stuff that we're talking about it's real, right? We're not talking about the glory of God like it's some kind of fairy tale thing that we would consider the glory on the inside of us like we consider Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, right? This is not a fairy tale. This is not a make-believe thing that we want to just have you think about a little bit so you can cheer yourself up. This is the glory of the living God on the inside of you, fully, in all of his splendor and all of his glory, living inside of you. This is not a pie in the sky thing. This is who you are and what you have on the inside of you. It may seem far because we're being short-sighted, but it is not far. It's right on the inside of you, right? And it's a matter of seeing the criticality and the importance of knowing who you are and what you have, right? If we don't give it the importance that it deserves, nobody else is going to do it for you. And coming to church here or listening online does not mean that you're giving it the importance. Only you can give the importance and the entrance to God to your own mind, right? You can appease your own self by church attendance, but that's not doing it, right? You can't appease yourself into something. You have to be able to know yourself that it is a priority. Just talking to people and talking about stuff does not mean it is a priority for you. That doesn't mean God is a priority in my life. The Lord speaking to me is important to me. It's you yourself, and nobody else can do that for you. It's you giving him entrance into your mind. And it just parable of the seed and the sower, right? Not being drawn away by the things of this world, by shiny things floating around. Not being distracted and your heart distraught by every wind of doctrine. Being able to have the discernment to be able to know, right, what is of the Lord and what isn't. Is it based on Christ coming in the flesh and is it not? And when it is based on Jesus Christ having come in the flesh than putting in the time that it takes to hear and to listen, right? It takes time. It takes time, right? It takes time. And it's more than 5 or 10 minutes a day. It takes time. So we have to put the time in. It's just time. It doesn't matter what you're physically doing. It's just a matter of giving him the time and entrance into your heart and mind on a regular basis, right? We don't have a health, a wealth, the problems that we see, right? That's not actually the problem. In other words, that's not what we want God to fix. We above everything else, right? You have to see this. Above everything else, you want to have God renew your mind. Above everything else, fix my thinking. Because if he fixes your thinking, he fixed everything, right? He's already done it all, but we don't see it. So if he fixes your mind, right, then we can become active takers of what he's given, right? But we're not freely drawing out. We're not freely drawing out if we don't really know, if we're not really assured, if we don't really know exactly, well, how does it actually work and what does that actually look like, right? It's an awesome time this year to say, you know what, Lord, any issue that I see in my life, it's just a knowledge problem.
We hope you enjoyed this message from Reformed Church. If you have, please share this with someone else and help us get this unpopular message to the world. If you'd like to support Reformed Church, you can do so at reforminus.com/give. Also on our website, you can take advantage of our free messages, articles, and even full discipleship courses. Start reforming your mind now at reforminus.com.